CDJ300 needs to be unpacked. We need to unpack all the piece parts for the jig. And then do away with the packing. Assemble our CDJ300, and so we can now actually start to put it together. We can now fix the clamping bars onto the jig. Pay attention to our offset pins. Right, we can now assemble our comb. Right, we now need to fix the rubber feet into the base of the jig. We'll now fix our jig to our mounting plate with the use of the screws provided. We can now mount our comb onto the jig. And there is our CDJ300 completely assembled, ready for mount use. The whole assembly to our workbench with some simple cramps. And there's our jig ready for use. We now need to prepare our router, and we need to fix a dedicated guide bush to the router. Now, if you can't actually fix the guide bush to your router, you will need a unibase, which we can then fix to your router, and then that will accept all the trend guide bushes. To secure the guide bush to the router, we use the bolts that came with the kit. And we now need to plunge the router to allow us to put the cutter in. And we need to put the cutter in to the K mark on the shank of the router. We now have the jig fixed to our bench, ready for use. And it's much easier to use this jig if we put a second piece of stock of the same thickness at both ends of the jig. So you can see that I've clamped two pieces of stock there in place at the other end of the jig. Now we're going to make a symmetrical lat dovetail, which will appear like this. And you can see that to cut this, the two pieces of stock at exactly the same time, this is how they're going to be cut, and we need this offset. And to give us this offset, we have these pins at each end of the bench. So if we offer our two pieces of wood in, and as long as we've cut our timber square, this will be self-squaring, because one will square against the front of the jig. They must be flat in the jig, and then we can tighten them up. Place our comb in position, make sure it's down firmly on the two pieces of wood. We now need to pay attention to our router, because we need the cutter set at the right depth, and to set this cutter to a nominal depth of 17mm using the gauge 1, I can offer it into there and check the setting. Now this jig benefits from using the fine height adjuster because you will need to vary the height of the cutter just very slightly to get your joint tighter or looser. Now, to start the cutting of this joint, I'm just going to do a pass across the front of the jig, and I'm going to cut a rebate. Now, I don't actually want a rebate. What I'm looking for is a scribe line, because without that, as I roll in and out of the comb, I'm going to suffer breakout on this front edge. We now have our scribe line. We can now roll in and out of the comb without causing any damage to this edge. Now, when we cut the joint, we need to get right into the bottom of the gullet here, or the female part of the joint won't be deep enough. And conversely, if we come out beyond that pin, the male will be too big to go into the female. So we have to stay in close contact with the comb. So having cut our joint, we can now remove the two pieces of wood. So we've actually cut it like that, and if we invert both pieces, we can see that we have a nicely fitting lat dovetail joint. Now, if the joint that we've cut is too loose, then we need to adjust the height of the cutter. And if it's too loose, we need to adjust the cutter downwards. And by using the fine height adjustment, this is easily achieved, because just half a turn on here will make an immense difference to how tight or loose the joint is. Obviously, conversely, if the joint is too tight, we can bring the cutter up towards the base, and that will loosen the joint. You can see from the joint that we've assembled that the joint is too deep. The male part has gone down into the female too far. Now, to adjust that on the jig, we remove the comb. You can see that there are two nylock nuts here. If we adjust those out half a turn or a turn, that would then bring our comb out, and we will then cut less deep into the female. When we actually buy the jig, the joint that we can cut is the Symmetrical Lat Dovetail, but there are other plates and other cutters available to make all these other joints. You don't need to expand. Thank you for watching the DVDs we've made about these products. I hope that they help you to set and use your jigs, and you can find far more information from the Trend catalogue easily available through your local stockist VERKTØY.